pronouns are he. Did it again. Hi, all. Thank you for being here, and thank you to all of our panelists for taking the time to chat with us. My name is Dean Strauss. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the communications manager at ASAN. I am a white dude with short, curly, less curly today, brown hair in a scarf today. Um, I am super excited for this conversation. I've got a speaking order that I'll stick to just because Zoom conversations can be tricky. But please feel free to pass or let me know if you want me to come back to you for any question if you need more time. To start us off, could each of you briefly introduce yourself and share a little about your advocacy journey? And we will start with Olatobi, if that works for you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Oluwatobi Odunwa. I use they them pronouns. I'm a Black person with blue headphones on. I'm wearing glasses and I have a white scarf on my head. I'm wearing a shirt that says "Say It Loud, Black Lives Matter," although you can't see uh, most of it. Um, so I do advocacy work for disabled folks and for trans folks, and there's often there's huge overlap there. My primary job is as the director of community grant program at the Autistic People of Color Fund. We give microgrants to autistic POC, and we also conduct policy advocacy. Um, Outside of APOC, I'm also a member of the U.S. Gender Disability Justice Alliance, which is a community space that also does advocacy. And I also do some more mutual aid in my personal life through TransAid Nashville, a mutual aid org by and for trans folks in the Tennessee area. So that is, yeah, a lot of that work that I do, the disability justice and the gender justice, trans justice work, also very much is heavily influenced by racial justice. And I will pass.
Thank you. Natasha, if you'd like to introduce yourself next.
Absolutely. Let me make sure I'm not on mute because I always do that. Okay, great. Hello, you handsome and gorgeous lot. My name is Natasha Nelson. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I have locks and they're in a side ponytail with a Kenyan scarf that has pink, green, black, and white in it that I've tied into a bow. And I have a pink, supposed to be satin shirt, but I think I got it cheaply, so it's probably like V-Coast or something. But it's a button down satin shirt. And I started my advocacy when my children were diagnosed, and it's also when I started my diagnosis. Um, with my children getting diagnosed, I hyperfixated on how to be the best parent I could possibly be for them. And so then I started doing as much research as I possibly could about autism and about supporting my children. And I realized very quickly that most of the resources that I got from the doctor's office to support my children were ableist things. And so that made me feel like, okay, well, I need positive things and to just be as transparent as possible the things that were supportive and helpful for my children, my autistic children, were also very whitewashed. Um, and if not whitewashed, excluding of Black families and Black caregivers. And so then it got into the space of I need to create things for families like mine and for my children. And through my journey of supporting my children and helping them to get diagnosed and support, very much being like, are you sure this is autism? Because this is what I've done my whole life. And she just needs to do this and she'll be fine. And and learning, no, other people don't just do this. That's a you thing. And so getting diagnosed myself and then saying, okay, why didn't my mom have the resources to help support and care for me and get me a diagnosis? And saying, okay, we need that too. And so my journey was really on a why wasn't this available to me? Why wasn't I supported? Someone needs this. I guess I have to make it happen, was how my journey started in this. And I've just been very blessed in the resources that have been available to me as I've been on this journey of I want to learn more. My children deserve more. Other people's children deserve more. How do we make that happen?
Absolutely, thank you. Jules, if you'd like to introduce yourself next.
Buju, Jules Nindijnakas, Magazine Nandudam. That's a traditional Ojibwe greeting. I said, hello, my name is Jules, and I'm Ego Clan. Um, so I am an Indigenous mother of three Black and Indigenous children. We're all autistic. Um, and my kids have some other neurodevelopmental stuff going on too, including learning disabilities. And so I became an advocate when my children became diagnosed, and then I was diagnosed. So it kind of became a necessity for us because, just as Natasha said, the current systems of support, quote unquote support, are not really built for us. So I moved in this direction. Um, and it's one of the most rewarding things that I've done in my life, shifting from accounting to advocacy. So I am the one of the co-executive directors of the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network. And I'm a co-author of a book titled I Will Die on This Hill, Autistic Adults, Autistic Children, and the, no, I'm sorry, Autism Parents, Autistic Adults, and the Children Who Deserve a Better World. Sorry, word access is not my strong suit right now. So thank you for your patience. Um, so a lot of the work that I do, I like to do within community, and I like to build systems of support and community alongside others. So there's not a whole lot of stuff that I like to do on my own, which is kind of a function of the idea of interdependence, which is one of the principles of disability justice, and that really guides like everything that I do. Um, so what else? I think that's about it. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And Max, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, I am Max Barrows. I am a black man with black hair, wearing uh, wearing a white dress shirt with light thin light blue stripes. Um, Okay, I'm going to start again. I'm Max Barrows. I'm a black man with black hair wearing a dress shirt that is white with light white thin stripes. I'm wearing a black tie. Um, in the background is just a bunch of posters like behind me as I sit in my office. I am a person on the autism spectrum. I am the outreach director for Green Mountain Self Advocates, GMSA, which is Vermont statewide self advocacy organization. My pronouns are he, him, his. My job is to support 20 local groups, local self advocacy groups across the state, stepping in whenever they need me. That might mean co-teaching a workshop or helping them manage relationships with their allies. A few days each month, I'm in high schools teaching self-advocacy skills geared toward getting and keeping a job. I also sit on state committees and boards. We have a legislative team that tries to stay ahead of issues, but mostly we're testifying or sending out action alerts to stop budget cuts. And even here in Vermont, we are constantly fighting to keep institutions closed and end segregation. That's a reminder to all of us, keep your eyes and ears open for any proposal that would take us backward. As a Black autistic man living in the woods, I work alongside other social justice groups in Vermont to hold law enforcement and policymakers accountable to our community. Um, and just glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. I'm a big fan of all of the work that you do. This is super exciting. So to get into our first real in-depth question, and I will also post it in the chat. Apologies for not doing that with the first one. How has building community with other autistic folks helped shape your understanding of yourself or your identity, or that combination? And we can again start with Oluwatobi. And again, feel free to pass or let me know if you want me to come back to you.
I think I'll pass for now. To come back to me, please. Thank you.
Sure. Natasha, if you'd like to jump in.
Absolutely. And also, I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm the founder of Supernova Parenting. I'm a positive discipline educator. So I focus on families of color that are navigating neurodivergence, intellectual developmental disabilities, and mental health vulnerabilities by providing education, resources, and different support groups and things that those families of color can go to. I used to just focus on Black families, but as Jules pointed out, indigenous, Asian, Latina families would be like, I don't have anywhere else to go either, Natasha. So can I come to you? And I'd be like, that's fine. And so we just moved to BIPOC. Even though for the longest I thought BIPOC was by people of color. I kept being very confused about that. But here we are. So I'm so sorry. That is what I do. Uh, but yes, for me personally, like I said, when I started this journey, the tools that were given to me by like my daughter's pediatrician, by the Babies Can't Wait program, which here in Georgia is the early intervention program that's available in every state for families who have their children diagnosed under the age of 3. Um, they were all very centric on ABA. They were all very centric on giving Autism Speaks resources and things like that. And I was blessed enough to already kind of be in advocacy spaces online. And so while I was giving those pieces, I had people who were very much comfortable with telling me, Tasha, that's kind of ableist. Let me tell you what they do, and things like that. And I was very blessed that those people came to me kindly instead of how we sometimes come off aggressive when we feel like someone is being ableist or problematic. But because I'd already built those connections, they came to me, kindly, but letting me know, Tasha, they're trying to normalize your children. They're not necessarily trying to help them. And so for me, having autistic friends, having autistic people in my community and connections, already who were doing the advocacy work that I wasn't even involved in, and eventually we built these friendships and I started being in these spaces actually helped me to center myself and my children more than just the resources that were given to me. So I hate to sound so judgy, but if I did not have those friends, I would be a puzzle piece autism mom probably somewhere unknowingly. But because I had those people kindly in my circles already and very honest with me about what was happening, I was able to rear myself more to programs like Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and Neuroclastic and finding the Lynn program here in my state and joining the Lynn program and things like that.
Absolutely. I think it's totally fair to acknowledge that like there is a push towards a certain direction, especially if you have autistic kids or you're raising autistic kids, for sure.
Mhm.
Jules, if you'd like to answer.
Thank you. So building community with other autistic people has definitely shaped my understanding of myself and my children. I've gotten a lot more support from the community, and I've tried to like share that support outwardly as well. Way more than the diagnose and dump experience that we had through my kids' like neuropsych evaluations. those, they're helpful in terms of like they can identify specific supports that might help a student in school. But other than that, like the medical system really has not much to offer us. Um, so being able to have friends in the community and colleagues in the community who have so much expertise, lived experiences, resources, and information to share, like that is something that I'm so lucky that we found. The way that I describe like an autism diagnosis for myself is like it's the key to unlock answers to questions that I've had about myself and the world around me for my whole life. Because before my diagnosis, I really was wondering like, why is life so hard for no reason? For no reason. Um, so learning more about autism has definitely helped me understand myself and how to um, navigate the world around me in a way that's respectful to myself, instead of trying to harm myself to fit into systems that don't really work for me. And especially my kids. It's very similar for my kids, in that I've learned a lot of strategies to support them from the community, things that you're not going to learn from a typical occupational therapist or speech therapist or whatever. And those are incredibly important resources, but that isn't going to give you enough information to like get through your whole life. But one of my favorite things is when we find neurodivergent professionals as well. So they're part of the community and they're building community within their professions. And that brings me a lot of joy. And we're really lucky to be able to have neurodivergent providers in my family's life. So I really love that for us.
Thank you. I love that. Yeah, Max, if you have thoughts.
So, when it comes to building communities with other autistic people, and shaping understanding of like ourselves and our identity, well, it's not just with autistic people, it's with people with disabilities in general. When it comes to self-advocacy, I meet people with disabilities from all over Vermont and the country, and I use this term and it's called peer-to-peer connection. And while connecting with peers, we realize that we are not alone while facing tough times. And the peer-to-peer connection creates a safe atmosphere where we can feel free to express ourselves. We count on each other for advice with life's challenges. Sometimes that coming from people without disabilities can feel sugar-coated, biased, and controlling. Not saying that it's bad, but from other peers, it comes from personal experience. With all that, it helps us discover strengths that we may not have been aware of at first. And we believe in each other and we see each other. And that plays a huge role in our understanding of ourselves and our identity. And it helps us feel proud of who we are as, whole people. And, you know, you never get old you never get too old for belonging to a self-advocacy group. It really changes people's lives. My good buddy, his name is Chester Finn, an awesome self-advocate that I've gotten to know over the years. You know, he's in his 70s and he always makes time for attending, local meetings. So that's my answer to that.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's especially important with how many autistic folks, especially autistic folks of color and queer autistic folks, and folks who just don't have the money for diagnosis at the right time. So many folks get diagnosed late and can feel like you lost out on that chance for community. Um, Olutobi, if you have thoughts, or I can move on to the next question.
I do have thoughts. Thank you. Yeah, I like agree with a lot of what folks have said. For my personal journey, getting like finding autistic community was integral to like to practice and like learn how to unmask. Um, I like I would find that even when I was alone, I was like often like policing myself to behave in a way I thought was like more appropriate. And really like finding autistic folks helped like reduce a lot of my social anxiety and a lot of like the chronic stress I was feeling. Like just having lunch with friends like would be like terribly exhausting. And it was because I was constantly trying to like put on this like mask, this front of like who I thought I should be when interacting with other people. Um, so that I think that has been like it's been a huge like quality of life change. As like a multi-marginalized person, chronic stress is that's life. But like it's been like really amazing to be able to like learn that like the ways that I act and I am are not problems. They don't need to be worked on. I can just exist as I am. I've been I think one of the memories that I can think about is I was at a regional gathering for like a local like organizing group and there was someone who was like rocking and I was like I'd never seen like another autistic person like stimming like outside of like their hand stuff like stimming in a way like and they were hand flapping and I was like oh my god like you can do that in public like that's allowed and it was like and it was like kind of like in a it wasn't professional but like a semi-professional space and I was like oh like this just like changes everything that I ever thought was possible. Oh sorry, I'm talking too fast. But yeah, I think it also helped me advocate for like changes in my life and also accommodations because I always thought that I needed to be trying harder to meet like a certain bar and knowing that okay no like I think even if you are not disabled, even if you're not like neurodivergent, like everyone still deserves to have their needs met. But it was part of my journey of like learning how other autistic folks like live their lives to be like, okay, like it is normal to like it is normal to have to need like support with this stuff. Yeah, so there was like I experienced like much less like pushing through like difficult situations and more like kind of standing back, reassessing, like centering myself, um, and remembering that like even if I'm the only like autistic neurodivergent person in the room, like my needs still deserve to get met. Like I can still be who I am, and that like that modeling can also like be a signal to other folks to be like, okay, it's normal to like do this. Um, yeah, I think yeah, that is it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I think this has brought up another thought. So I'm gonna skip to a later question, but I will continue to go in order after, I hope. But I wanted to ask, what advice would you all give to an autistic person who is just starting to explore self-advocacy or just trying to start connecting to the autistic community? Since I think that is, such a big part of building community, but what does that like look like in practice? Because I think that can be the hard part. Like, what do I do next? Um, and Luatobi, if you want, I can jump to a later person if you want, or if you want to kick things off. I know you just spoke, so if you need a break.
I can go ahead. Um, I would say that I think like it's super important to like meet other autistic folks. It's so important um to like take the chance of like joining like an in-person group or like virtual. I feel like virtual groups, if that's accessible for you, like there's so many options of like places that you can like join. At the APOC fund we have like we've recently started doing like community spaces for disabled BIPOC. The US Gender and Disability Justice Alliance also like is a space where like they will have like game nights and like special interests like show and tell. So I think finding finding other autistic people, I think is so integral. Like other disabled folks is so important. Like just kind of like start to explore self advocacy. I think something else that I would tell folks is go with your gut. Like Yeah, go with your gut. Like listen to like what you're feeling inside. Sometimes sometimes it can be overwhelming to kind of shift from like if you're used to like struggling, sometimes like being in a comfortable space can be like too much stimuli, if that makes sense. Um, I would also say that I would also say um figure out like what you are passionate about. Like sometimes like a social interest like can be the way to like finding out this stuff. I would also say like follow online or like like in the news and stuff, like follow groups of like disabled folks, like figure out like what's happening in like your local atmosphere, what's happening if there are other like marginalized communities that you belong to, like what are folks doing there. I think it's so important to join folks when you can. I feel like there can be like a burden to kind of like I don't know, reinvent. And sometimes that is necessary. And also like you deserve to feel comfortable and feel safe and have that be your starting point. Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that feeling the need to reinvent both it is hard to build community from the ground up, and also I think it's important to recognize when like folks have been doing it, and there is already this thing that you can join and add to instead of trying to start this thing from the ground up because the community is everywhere, even if it feels harder to find in places. Natasha, if you have thoughts.
I do. So I'm the book nerd. So when my children got diagnosed, when I got diagnosed, I went to read everything and research everything. That's me. I always laugh because of people when they talk to me and they get to know me, and they're like, "You're so personable." And I say yes and no, because I really don't want to sit and talk with you. I really rather read. And if we could talk to each other through text message, I would be so happy. So that's really where my autism comes in. I rather sit with my thoughts and read your thoughts than talk to you about your thoughts. And so I included some links. First off, ASIN has an amazing book. They have a lot of amazing books, but they have an amazing book that's specifically about welcoming you to the autistic community and giving so many resources and so much affirmation and validation on things that you might be feeling. Because, of course, autism is a spectrum and it's not a linear spectrum, it's a circular spectrum with many different aspects. But there are some things that we're like, I see you. I do that too. Uh, uh, Olu Oluwatobi, did I pronounce it correct? I always like to pronounce people's names correct. I was practicing. So talked about like seeing the first time I saw another Black autistic person who was considered high functioning, I hate that term, stimming at a professional event. And I was like, oh, I can do that too. I can rock now. That's so cool. And nobody's going to judge me and they're still going to think I have important things to say. Yay. So validating those experiences, I think is really important. So I really love that was in the book. I also included the autistic women in non-binary networks welcome packet. They have an amazing welcome packet. I believe it's also in Spanish, if I'm not mistaken. And there's one in plain language if someone has an intellectual developmental disability and they still like to read like I do. They also have Sincerely Your Autistic Black Child on PDF for you to be able to read online. And they have a neurodiversity and gentle parenting journey in color book for you to read online. So wherever you are in that journey, especially if you're right in the beginning, they also have a trans autistic healthcare guide. So if you're a nerd or researcher like me, there are a lot of books and research out there that's really helpful too.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, as a fellow rather read than talk, appreciate it. And yet Owen has so many just incredible resources and a big fan of reading like blogs from different autistic folks and their experiences. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to engage. Um, Jules, if you have thoughts.
Hi. So I really like both of your advice so far. And like I want to I have so many thoughts right now. So one of the most important things when you're first starting getting into advocacy is like finding your niche, like finding what matters to you, what you have the energy for, and recognizing your own limitations because nobody can be everything to everyone all the time. And so being able to set boundaries about like what you can do, your real capacity, and being honest about that is super important. Um, and also recognizing, and I really wish that I could remember where I heard this. Somebody far more wise than me once said that self-care is a radical political act. Like taking care of yourself is advocacy. Making sure your disability access needs are met, that matters. And then also recognizing your privilege. And I want to name something that I see in this room, and it's probably crossed the minds of others as well. Um, but the panelists today, um, we're all speaking people. And I want to recognize speaking ability is a privilege. And I don't think we talk about that enough. And oftentimes non-speaking people or people who rely on AAC to communicate are, kind of dismissed or left out or erased. And so in the context of advocacy, make sure you're looking around and seeing who isn't represented and invite them and learn from people who are different from you and share the needs of communities that are marginalized, because too often that doesn't happen. So something that I like to do or that I tend to do in advocacy situations is I want to think about who needs me to show up for them and how can I show up for them, because that's really important. Um, Instead of being self-focused all the time. Um, so just showing up for the community. That's part of building community, is showing up for other people. Um, and then there was something else I was going to say. Um, okay, so I think it was Audre Lorde. Somebody said in the comment for that quote. So thank you for that. But that's really important, is showing up for yourself and showing up for other people as well.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'm going to share a quick link to Communication First. It does great work with non-speaking folks, AAC users, and have a very cool survey on like the perspectives from AAC users on language and things like that. Um, they do super great work. Max, if you have thoughts.
So, advice I would give to autistic people who are just starting to explore self-advocacy and connect with the autistic community. I would say get involved. It's worth it. When it comes to self-advocacy, get involved. Here's what I've learned from when I started to explore and connect with people with disabilities. And I'll repeat some of what I said before, but when people with disabilities join a self-advocacy group, they realize that they are not alone. And this is what, again, I call the peer-to-peer connection. And connecting with peers creates a safe and positive space where people can just lean on each other during hard times and share what's really on, their minds without feeling timid, like the way they sometimes do around people who are not their peers. And to be honest, help from people who aren't peers can sometimes feel, again, sugar-coated, biased, or controlling, even when it's well intended. With peers, the truth comes from us. The peer might be more willing to admit they made a mistake to another peer because many of us fear punishment or judgment if we say the same thing to a provider. Um, that's the power of peer-to-peer connections. We understand each other because we've grown up with disabilities. We know what we face and we know what our peers are likely to face too. And I connect with peers who understand me and they learn from me and I learn from them. And like just peer-to-peer connections help us become better leaders. We believe in one another because we see each other's strengths, and give real feedback to each other and have high expectations for each other. And that's what peer-to-peer connection is all about: learning from each other, telling the truth, and building leadership from the inside out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Uh, Thank you all. I wanted to touch on your advice for folks who are just starting to explore self-advocacy or just starting to get involved, because I think community and finding ways to get involved in community is maybe one of the solutions to the rise of misinformation we've seen about autism, especially recently. But obviously, this is a very long issue. Um, but we have seen this rise in dangerous misinformation about autistic folks, about autism recently, from various levels of our society. How do you feel like we combat this, both like inside and outside of our community? Um, and if folks need time, I know that's been on a lot of our minds forever. But Oluwatobi, if you want to start or if you need time, let me know.
Yeah, I would say that truth is like that is the cure to misinformation. So I would say like listen to autistic people, like learn about autistic people in groups that you belong to and groups that you don't belong to. Learn about trans autistic folks, learn about non-speaking autistic folks, learn about like autistic folks with sensory disabilities, learn about like Black, Indigenous, like autistic folks. I think it's so important to be um, it's so important to be like, okay, you hear this somewhere, like talk to the folks that it actually like impacts. Like that's where you'll find the truth. I think it's also super important to also like I think that I think it's super important to also engage with like social justice as a concept, like liberation as a concept, because I will say this, like representational politics is not everything. Like our society has ableism and white supremacy baked into the fabric of like this world, and that will show up even in Black folks, even in like disabled folks. Um, I also think that it's super important to kind of to like as I think it's important. I think this also applies to like the previous question about self advocacy. To like find your why. And like for me, my why is like building a world where everyone is taken care of. I think that joy and like happiness like is the point of social justice. And I think that like if you are dealing with like misinformation and you like does that like the things that you're being told, like how does that line up with your values? I think that's like a very good check. Like is this information that like is wanting to take care of people, or is it something that like isolates people? Is it something that like marginalizes, kind of sidelines people, and like is it something that compares people and makes them and says that some people are not worth it, are not like um are not as worthy of living, I think it's super important to like kind of stay in contact with your values and to also be in conversation with like liberation movements and with like autistic led disabled led spaces. I think if you're kind of like doing all of that, I think it's very easy to so like that's a checking, and like that I think that's a solution for misinformation. It's like, okay, I hear this thing, like, what is the actual truth? Like, who else is speaking on this? Um, Especially starting from the folks that it, directly affects or is talking about.
Absolutely, thank you. And I really appreciate that, like finding your why. At ASN, we always like at lots of autistic folks, but we always push that like no one is too disabled to deserve rights. We're all autistic people are autistic, and all autistic people deserve rights. And I think that kind of that is harder to ignore for folks when you actually start to interact with autistic folks and view us as people, and all of us deserve rights. Um, yeah. Natasha, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. So one of the main things is almost kind of ending where Oluwatobi started at, and that's in I really had to hone in on what my why was. The reason for that is I'm ADHD, so I have autism and ADHD and a little OCD happening all at once, everywhere, all at once. And what tends to happen is just what happened with my children and my autism advocacy journey happens with everything. So I see a need and I'm like, well, why isn't that there? Well, somebody needs to do something. Well, I'm going to do something. And as Jules pointed out, you can start overwhelming yourself and being everything to everyone when you do that. And so I really had, with this new administration, with these new ideas and this new, it almost feels like an attack on disability and autism. I really had to hone in on what is my role in this? What do I want my role in this to be? How much bandwidth do I have? Because I can't have a support group for parents who are also autistic themselves, and then also have this other support group for late diagnosed autistic people, and then also have this. I can't do all the things, and I have to be okay with that. So where am I comfortable at? What can I do? What is my part that is not going to overwhelm me or put ableist stipulations on me in helping and supporting my people in my community? And when I say my people in my community, I am specifically talking about autistic people of color. What does that look like? Um, and so that was the biggest thing for me, was being having that honest self-reflection, self-conversation, and then drawing my lines in the sand of, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, right? That's one. Two, that was also being honest with my privileges. As Jules pointed out, I'm a vivacious speaker. I have a voice and I have a willingness and multiple friends who don't have that voice, who use AAC devices. I have people in my life who are non speaking. And so for me, that means being in rooms that are very uncomfortable to speak up for people who can't speak up. So I joined groups like the state's Medicaid advisory board. And I have to stand in front of people and politicians who I really don't like and who I'm really uncomfortable with, and try to be the voice for people who don't have that voice, who these people wouldn't even be open to listening to or reading their AAC device response. And it's taxing, but I feel like it's my job. I don't want to say it's my job and just put it there, but I felt like that was my role in this fight, was what am I gonna do and what does that look like? And for me, that looks like being in those very uncomfortable rooms and shouting at people for people who don't have a voice.
Thank you. Jules, your thoughts?
I have so many thoughts about this. The misinformation that is becoming far too mainstream is
Mhm.
um, problematic to say the least. But we've always had a problem with misinformation when it comes to autism.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm not going to name any names, but when my oldest child was 2 years old, I used Excite, the Excite search engine. That's how old I am. I was born in the 1900s. Um, to Google, why is my toddler flapping? And all of the information that came up was so stigmatizing,
Mhm.
so harmful,
Mhm.
um, that I read it and I just rejected it. Like my gut rejected the information that they were spewing, because my child is a gift.
Mhm.
Just my child is a gift. All of my children are gifts. And the horrible things that were online at the time made me reject the diagnosis, or even the idea that my kid could be autistic. And I didn't come back to it for like 8 years. It was that horrible.
Mhm.
Talking about how, autistic children destroy their families and all this stuff. And I'm like, you're I don't talk about my child that way. I don't see my child that way, and I don't accept the information that you're sharing because that's not my child. And we were struggling. That's not to say we weren't, having our challenges, but there's a respectful way to talk about autism. And that's what we should be doing because autistic people are people and all people deserve respect. Um, and now we've progressed to this place where parents are relying on the internet or social media for information from other parents that causes harm. Like there are things like chelation, where they're detoxing, quote unquote, their children from heavy metals, and it's dangerous. There are parents who are giving their children bleach enemas,
Mm.
thinking that their child has, um, I can't remember the word, but like essentially little, an infection of some kind. Um, that's harmful, and that's been going on for close to a decade that I know about, maybe longer. Um, but there's also like the anti-vax movement or
Mm.
the however they want to phrase it, that is resulting in a lot of harm to a lot of people. And another principle of disability justice is the concept of cross-movement solidarity. And we need to name how the anti-vax rhetoric harms not just autistic people, but all children. And lately, it's really been harming the immigrant community, specifically when it comes to DHS capturing, like, I don't know how to say abducting and holding immigrant people hostage in facilities where they don't have clean water, they don't have healthy food, and there are measles outbreaks. And so the harmful misinformation about like vaccines causing autism is harming a lot of folks, not just autistic kids. And also vaccines don't cause autism. Um, but now we have now we have the Health and Human Services Department that is, I don't know how else to say that they are destroying um, the autistic community from all angles, whether it's tearing apart our supports and services funding, whether it's promoting anti-vax rhetoric or vaccination choice is what they like to call it, but it's not just that. Um, but it causes real harm to a lot of people. And it's not just impacting the autistic community. Um, but a lot of that boils down to um, like computer literacy and like not just that, but like education. Our education system has been defunded so much that individuals um, may not know how to read a research study. They may not know how to investigate things or find accurate information. Um, and that boils down to not being taught in public schools and otherwise. Um, so the misinformation is very harmful in a lot of different ways. Um, and I don't really know how to fix that, but like just sharing accurate and helpful information um, is probably one of the best things that we can do, and with compassion, because when we shut down someone who has held misinformation in their knowledge or whatever, they're gonna encounter a new idea, and then they're gonna experience something called cognitive dissonance, which means like this new idea doesn't fit with what I already think that I know, so I'm going to automatically reject the new information. And if they're feeling attacked, or if they're feeling like somebody is talking down to them, or if they feel like somebody is rejecting their lived experience, they're not going to listen at all. So it's really important to have these conversations with like presenting new information in a productive way and in a non-attacking way. Um, Even though, that's kind of an impossible standard to hold for somebody like all the time. Sometimes it's going to be contentious, but doing the best that we can to meet people with compassion, to get them accurate and helpful information.
Absolutely. Thank you. Uh, yeah, I have more thoughts, but I would love to get your thoughts, Max.
Well, when it comes to combating misinformation, I do this in many ways. I work with SARTAC, which stands for the Self Advocacy Resource and Technical Assistance Center. And we have weekly calls with 50 plus people with disabilities who do jobs like mine from more than 35 states. And to combat this misinformation, we are giving them the facts about autism written in plain language. Every few months, we talk about how we are spreading the word throughout our state and local self-advocacy groups. But it is not just about the facts and strategies to eliminate these falsehoods. We need to check in with each other. This assault on us has individuals, and as a people, is painful. And we need to talk about it in our peer support groups and make sure everyone is doing okay. Um, on a personal level, when I first heard, I can't hold my tongue about this, but when I first heard RFK Jr. say that autism is destroying families, it felt like someone came up behind me and knocked me hard to the ground. I have never felt so disrespected by people in charge of our country. And it makes me wonder, like, no matter how much information about autism is out there, no matter how many years have passed, how does our society still see us this way? I still have trust issues around how autism is looked at. Even with all that people know, it doesn't always seem to matter. At, at this time, I am using every opportunity I have. For example, when testifying at the State House, when presenting to high school students, if I am doing a podcast, when training support staff, I use every opportunity to be a myth buster. Now,
Mhm.
people need to know how outraged we are by these lies.
Great.
Absolutely. Uh, yeah, so I'm gonna jump into the next question and continue my thoughts with this. Um, So for folks who want to move beyond awareness and towards real acceptance, what kind of action should they take? And to take that further, what does acceptance mean today, given everything our community and all marginalized communities are dealing with? The violence from DHS, as Jules said, the dangerous misinformation targeting our community, especially autistic folks with intellectual disabilities, the rising push towards institutionalizations, again, especially for non-speaking autistic folks, for autistic folks with intellectual disabilities, and folks living with homelessness or poverty, which we know there's a higher chance for that for autistic folks, especially autistic folks of color. So how do we move from awareness towards acceptance? What does that mean today? And I will start with Olutopia as always.
Yeah. Um, so I would start by saying that it's important to kind of get acquainted with the concept of neurodiversity, which is this concept that kind of essentially kind of deconstructs neurotypical and neurodivergent as labels, and as actually like we all live on a spectrum where like our brains like all work very specific ways. Like each person's individual brain like works in a specific way. And like um it kind of shows that like neurotypical really is this kind of like it's a social construct that some people find it easier to fit into, but like it's still like they're still having to like squash themselves to fit into that. So I think that it's super important to kind of like to deconstruct like what we see as normal, what we see as healthy, what we see as like yeah, as typical. And I think it's also equally important to celebrate the folks who like aren't able to like mask, the folks who like are more visibly neurodivergent. Because like those folks like even under the concept of neurodiversity like those folks are still like more at risk of like abuse interpersonal like violence and abuse and also like systemic harm like they are at like at higher risk. um I would also say that like kind of like going along with like what Jules has been saying, like learn about and like practice like disability justice. Like neurodiversity kind of fits into DJ disability justice. But disability justice is all about just kind of like creating new rules for like how we interact with the world, how we see ourselves and see other people. And I feel like DJ is so wonderful because it was created by folks with like by queer folks, by trans folks, by folks of color, by like multiply disabled folks, neurodivergent folks, and it really kind of like breaks across all like systems of oppression, and kind of grounds us and like reignites like empathy because I feel like like the that's often like a big part. Like if you're not able to like have empathy for someone, like then you can easily dehumanize them. You can easily like dismiss them, and like you can easily say like this is my enemy. Like these people are not part of my people. There's me, and then there's like them. So that dissociation is so critical. And so like if you're practicing empathy and and you won't be perfect. Like we're all growing up in this ableist, white supremacist, like colonial imperialist society. Like we're all being taught these things. Even if you didn't learn it at home, you definitely learned it like out in the world. You definitely see it on the internet, um, and see it in our government, in our policies, the systems that we have. So I think it's super important to like constantly be investigating like how you are interacting, um, like how your worldview kind of appears. Um, I would also say that, and I think it's super important to always be like learning from like disabled folks of color, from trans folks, because I think it's very easy to get kind of like narrow view and then like I think this like happens even when you're doing advocacy. You're like, okay, this is my lane, and like this is what I'm going to focus on. And even like when you are focusing on like this thing that you feel called to, I think it's super important to kind of like be kind of checking in on the other stuff because they all come together. And we don't want to like create a system where like we're trying to like uplift a certain group of people while leaving behind other folks. Like we're not free until like we're all free. Um, and the last thing that I'll say is that it's so important. Like I was in a training recently, and we talked about accountability, and we talked about like how accountability is kind of like successful like accountability that is not like that just does not cause harm, and that like that is coming from an empathetic place. Like depends on relationship. Like you will listen to criticism like from someone that you know and you trust. So I think it's super important as like you are learning, like as you are changing your worldview to like become more accepting of like all people, as you are like deconstructing how the systems that we have, like how like they harm and they oppress, and like the truths that I think that we kind of grow up knowing are not often like the real truth. Like it's I think it's so important to like use the relationships that you have with people in your life to like advocate for these things. Like if you have like an anti-vaxxer like on, like like talk to her about it. Like because like have consistent conversations with these folks in your lives who like believe these harmful things, because like you're the only one who can like affect them. Like they're not going to listen to like folks on the internet. Like they've created their news cycle to like reinforce the beliefs that they already have. Relationship is so important. I think it's very important that um that folks, and especially like allies, are not like discarding like bias folks. Like it is your job especially to like stay with them and like bring them along, because you're the only one who can move them.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that note at the end of like not discarding folks. Because often if you can discard people, you're probably one of the few people that could like change them. And I love what Natasha put in the chat, connection before education or correction. I'm so excited to hear your thoughts, Natasha.
Yes. So a lot of it honestly kind of mirrors what Toby was talking about because I come from a disability justice and social justice education background, all of that. A lot of the issues that I had when I first got into these advocacy spaces, these disability spaces, these autism spaces was a lack of intersectionality and a lack of awareness that not everyone has awareness. So I kept getting my panties in a bunch because everyone wanted to move away from awareness to acceptance. And I was like, the general public is not aware of the circular spectrum of autism. So we're saying, how do we move from awareness to acceptance? And I'm like, those people still don't know. Like the people I'm running into the grocery store, I'm still having to do a full 15-minute explanation on why my daughter can stem in the grocery line. So obviously they still don't know. And so I remember asking, particularly at the Atlanta Capitol event that we had recently, do we just need a word with a A? And we're trying to find a word between acceptance and awareness that starts with an A because autism starts with an A, and we want to do some literary device thing here. But in order for us to get to acceptance, in order for you to accept something, you have to be aware of it and get the information. And then you have to, as Toby talked about, you have to self reflect on it and work through it and get through. Jules talked about cognitive dissonance that happens at first. And you're kind of like, this doesn't mesh with what I know before, and then you have to have connection with that person and get empathy with the all of those things work together for us to get real acceptance. You have to get the knowledge. You have to self-reflect on that knowledge. You have to make that knowledge work in your community and information. You have to connect with that knowledge. And so we can't go away from awareness. Awareness is a part of real acceptance. We have to keep that education aspect. And there absolutely has to be connection. We cannot fall into this us versus them system that is being built in this country. The us versus them system allows us to continue to be the them because I mean the us they are the majority. We're the them. And we won't get our rights. We won't get the things that we need if we continue this us versus them. That doesn't mean I'm not telling you to mask and to sugarcoat but I'm telling you we can't just throw people away. We have to work our dangedness to educate, to have them self reflect, to make them connected to their lives. That doesn't mean that they have to completely understand disability, but they have to see it. I like to smack people in the face with my autism. And what I mean by that is, I love being at the park. I have two children who are autistic. One is weight has less support needs than the other child. One child is minimum speaking, constantly moving, constantly stimming. She could mask if she wanted to, but she's never been made to mask because she lives in my household. And so she is autistically loud, and I love it. But it does throw people off. And they'll say little things like, oh, that must be so hard for you, blah, blah. And I love to smack them in the face and go, no, because I'm autistic And I get it. I understand sensory, I understand executive function. I have posters in every room in my house because we are just fine with alternative communication. We do sign language in my house. My daughter will play a song to tell us to get the hell out of her room. Literally, hey, na, 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 hey, means get out. And we know it, and we get out. And so, because of that, I am okay with this life. I know how to make our life work for us instead of trying to have your life, right? I'm able to slap people in the face with that because I'm not afraid to connect myself to autism that has high support needs just because I'm a less support need person. I like to say I'm not necessarily low support needs. Catch me on a bad day, there's a lot of supports needed. But I think that that important thing is not to be trying to get away from awareness, but incorporating awareness in our real acceptance. And that very much goes with what Jules and Oluwatabi were talking about with the intersections of understanding that a lot of our movements are connected, right? So the movement for the immigration community, the movement for the trans community, a lot of these things are interconnected. We are connected, and connection before education and correction. But all three are needed in order for us to move to real acceptance.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's super real. I appreciate the idea of like awareness as a part of acceptance. When we talk about like acceptance as an action, I think learning can and should be a step in that. Absolutely. Jules, I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Um, to like what actions to take if we want to move beyond, and I'm going to incorporate what you said, Natasha, in like words are hard. I should put that on a t-shirt and sell it. I'm just kidding. um so education is a component of acceptance, um somewhat, to me, because for me I have the idea of like radical acceptance of accepting life on life's terms. Autism exists, autistic people exist. I feel like pretty much everyone in the US is aware that autism exists. And unfortunately, it is now used as an insult, for a lot of our younger folks. Well, I guess older people too. Um, I've gotten some really nasty comments over the years. Um, Education is really important, and teaching people what autism really is versus, the misinformation is important. So I was thinking, after we were done with the misinformation topic or question, I was like, I want to add something that I like to share. A lot of the time, people see autism as a behavioral disorder. Autism is actually diagnosed based on observable behaviors rather than an internal experience. So it makes sense that people would perceive autism as a behavioral thing. Autism is not a behavioral thing. Autism is a social, communication, and sensory disability. That's the beginning and the end of it. That is all that it incorporates. And autistic people often have co-occurring conditions. Like, I don't know any autistic people who don't have any co-occurring conditions. And sometimes like people will conflate different conditions and try to turn it into like a competition of who has it harder or whatever. And it for me, that conversation doesn't really matter because everybody deserves to have their disability related needs met, whatever the disability is. Um, so I do, I like to talk about complex neurodevelopmental disabilities when it comes to people who are often stigmatized, who have higher support needs, and are often marginalized in ways that I don't experience. Instead of, um, some of the things that people are saying now is like severe autism, or there's another one, um, that I can't remember the term right now.
Profound. Profound.
Profound, yes. So, I mean, I don't want to ever invalidate somebody's experiences or difficulties in life. And at the same time, I want to share information that is helpful to people who are struggling. Because how else are we going to improve life for their kids if we don't provide meaningful support to parents and caregivers? Like two things can be true, right? Um, but then we look at um, things like how do we shift the culture towards acceptance? Um, but we're not even teaching children to be accepting of their peers because we have segregated classrooms for students with autism or other neurodevelopmental disabilities or neurodivergence or you know or so students aren't learning how to be accepting even beginning in kindergarten. Children in preschool are often set on a track through the special education system to be excluded so that they will never graduate high school with a high school diploma. They're set on this track where they'll get a certificate of completion once they're 20 something years old. And it's this model of exclusion. And we're just all okay with it somehow. How are we expected to shift the culture towards acceptance of neurodivergent people if we're not even allowing them to be in the classroom with typically developing peers? Um, so it's a problem. So, I mean, policy work is super important. Um, in terms of like shifting from like, yes, autism exists, here's what it is. We can include that in conversations about what does it mean to include neurodivergent people? What does it mean to accept neurodivergent people? So kind of like two things can be true. I also don't love the word autism awareness. I think that's true for a lot of neurodivergent people, autistic people, um, because there is a lot of stigma. There's a certain mindset that is often associated with the term autism awareness, and a lot of autistic people feel it's more like autism be-awareness. Like there's a meme that I would love to credit, but again, if somebody knows who created it, please let me know. But it's like autism awareness. Oh, look out, beware. They might be behind you. Autism might be in the room with you right now. And that one always like kind of tickles me because it's like we can know that autism exists and still have inaccurate information, that harmful misinformation, and not do anything to make the world more accepting or more inclusive. Um, and it starts with like the policy work to get, you know, preschoolers in school instead of like the educational neglect that a lot of autistic kids experience when they're pushed into a day program. And I don't mean to make this like, you know, a controversial thing or upset anyone. But like things like ABA, a lot of autistic kids are put into a full-time ABA program and they're deprived of the opportunity to even interact with neurotypical peers. They're deprived of the opportunity to learn. And how how do we ensure that all children, and I mean, all children have the benefit of inclusion in their communities, inclusion with their peers, because it is not just disabled children that lose out due to segregation. Abled children are losing just as much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Max, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Can you repeat the question again? I think there was some long answers, but I'm just trying to.
Yeah. So for people who want to move beyond awareness and towards real acceptance, what actions should they take? And to take that further, what do you think acceptance means today, given everything our community and all marginalized communities are dealing with?
The thing about awareness is it's just a reminder that autism is around. I also hear the word awareness used with like cancers and other medical issues that are mentioned at times. Just because someone is aware of something that makes us different doesn't mean that they will accept it. And it doesn't mean that they will accept us or accept what makes us different. So awareness doesn't go far enough. If we really want to be seen as whole, acceptance is the way to go.
Absolutely, thank you. And I know we're coming up on time, so I want to just offer. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No. I just was, yeah. I was just saying, yeah, we're coming up on time. I may have a hard stop at like 5:30, so.
Absolutely. Just before we wrap up, I wanted to just offer if there's anything anyone would like the audience to remember or take away, or just a chance to add anything that you like. I will go in order, but again, feel free to pass or let me know if you want me to come back. I know we're coming to time. Luatobi, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, I'd just like to address one of the questions in the chat. So I am Nigerian, immigrated when I was 10 to the US. I would say that like my message to autistic folks in Africa, who I would say like, I don't know, a two-pronged approach. I'm not like not an expert on this. I just have like my lived experience of like being Nigerian, living with my Nigerian parents who still don't like, who still like, no, you don't have autism. Like you're like, you did well in school. Um, what I would say is that like a two-pronged approach of like, if you can change, I think oftentimes the focus of like folks in global south, folks people who are immigrants, is the focus is on like, okay, success. It's like on, okay, if you can like graduate school, if you can like get a good job, if you could provide like, that is success. I think if you can shift the folks in your life to like to value like emotional well-being, to like value like happiness, to not have happiness equal like educational or like professional success, like that is one way to be like, okay, just because your child is not performing in a way that like might be a great fit for like educational spaces or professional spaces does not mean that your child is like wrong. Like there are things that are more important. Like, is your child happy? Does your child feel loved? I think like rephrasing in that way, and then I think the other approach is like if you try that or like folks in your life are not amenable to that, I think it's really like about like I guess this is a it's not the one I favor, but it like I think it is like it's a survival mechanism of like proving essentially competence. Like I think that like the other approach for folks who are not as available to acceptance is kind of being like, okay, non-autistic folks have a certain set, like tend to have certain set of skills. Autistic folk have a certain set of skills. I think that it can be super important in like building awareness, like to get to a baseline. Yeah, that is what I will say on that. I like I have like autistic like family friends. I have family friends who have autistic children, and I see the way they treat their children. And it can be hard to watch. And I speak up when I can, and I like give advice when I can. But it can be hard. So I would say that like, if you can just like show like the benefits of being autistic, the benefits of being neurodivergent, and also like moving folks towards like acceptance and like focusing on joy. And I will just add that like it will be hard to move folks towards acceptance because that means they will have to accept oftentimes that they were harmed, that they were abused, and that like they committed harm, that they committed abuse. So I think that if you're like having that conversation, like there needs to be like a trauma element, trauma focus, and expectation of like people bringing that baggage yeah, to the conversation.
Thank
Dean,
you.
I'm long-winded. Can Max go in front of me since he has a hard stop at 5:30?
Yes, absolutely. Please, Max, I would love to hear your thoughts.
So, the part about taking like actions that we take when it comes to autism acceptance is we need to formalize our relationship with our allies. We need to make sure that they believe in presuming competence. When allies embrace presuming competence, it really can be life-changing. And by that, I mean, don't assume what someone with a disability can or cannot do based on what you see at first. Presuming that a person is not intelligent based on how they look or move is a tragedy. Don't assume that we can't do things on our own. We may need support, but give us opportunities. In other words, presume competence. Don't judge a book by its cover. Um, Believe that all people with disabilities have abilities. Avoid prejudging what a person can and cannot do. Have high expectations and dreams for us. Most people with disabilities perform better than expected when others expect us to do well. Avoid using stereotypes in your thinking. Keep in mind that people with limited speech usually understand more than they can express. Please do not make assumptions about what we can or cannot do. Have an open mind. Get to know someone. Let them be in the driver's seat of telling you what they are good at and go from there. And just for the wrap up question, just if there's anything else I would like to add, for those in the audience who are allies, our message is we want what you got. We want to be respected as equal members of society. Sadly, people with disabilities are often looked down on instead of looked up to. Society sends a message that we are not capable, that we are too slow. This false idea makes people think we cannot do things for ourselves like adults. It makes it harder for us to go to work, go to college, date, travel, get married, and have a family. We need you to be our allies. Please presume competence. And by that, I mean don't assume what we can or cannot do based on what you see at first. Hold your judgment and give us a chance. And for any self advocates in the audience, keep being you, keep believing in yourself. Know that anyone can be a leader. You don't have to be, you don't have to have a job with a big name or a big position. Leadership is really what we do, and it's not about the role we are in. It goes beyond that. It's what actions you take to make life better for people with disabilities. That is what makes you a leader.
Thank you so much, Max, and thank you so much for being here. I know you have a hard cut. I appreciate your time and your answers so much. I promise not to keep folks too late. I really do appreciate your time. Natasha, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. So I want to answer a question that was in the Q&A by Zach Herman, because I think it's a really important question in this time. And the question goes, in your personal experience, how do you maintain optimism in this time of darkness? I worry that the continuous harm that is caused by not supporting marginalized groups, including autistic people, makes our journey more difficult and adds to your workload. Um, and so I think this is a really important question. I see a lot of people kind of falling into this nihilism and this hopelessness, um, and I used to get really, I'm trying to be honest and transparent. I used to get kind of frustrated because I'm like indigenous people went through genocide. Like black people went through genocide. I'm like, we have been through worse things in history. Like this sucks. It absolutely sucks. And I don't want to invalidate anyone. But if our ancestors had hope with all of the things that they went through, we can have hope for the future and for future generations. And sometimes it's just the little things that we do that make change for future generations. And so I would tell you, Zach, how I maintain optimism is with hope and with ideas for the future, right? So my idea is, what do I want? And what I want is for small children of color who are autistic to be able to get supports that they need, to able to be accepted by their family, to be able to have community, to be able to feel like, as Max put it, that they have rights, that they have worth, that they have belonging, significance, and connectedness, no matter their culture, no matter their gender identity, no matter any of these other things, right? That is the hope. And so for me, it's what can I do reasonably? What can I do? And what can I influence to make that a possibility in the future? And if I'm doing that small thing of my part in that job of that future, that's hope. That's optimism. That's positivity.
Thank you so much. And Jules, I would love if you would share the final thoughts. Sorry.
Okay, everybody else is like a very tough act to follow. Um, Especially Max had so many wonderful things to say, and I appreciate that, especially when he talked about leadership. Um, we all have the capacity to be leaders, and sometimes um, it's just a matter of showing up for our community and looking out for one another and like being in community with one another. Because it can feel really lonely to be an autistic person in this world. Um, and maybe not everyone feels that way, but I know that most of the autistic people that I know have felt that way at times. Um, but showing up for one another and building community is something that we need to do so desperately, and so many of us are doing the work um, to build community for us. Um, and I also like kind of one of the last things that I want to say is like autistic people don't need to be fixed, but we do need to fix the world around us. We need to fix systems of oppression. We need to fix broken policies. We need to show up for one another and learn about um, how can we contribute to a better world for the next generation. One of the teachings that I have as an Anishinaabe woman is to look back 7 generations and look forward 7 generations every time I'm making a decision. So that means like, what choices am I making today that is going to impact 7 generations from now? So I'm not just looking at today, I'm looking at many, many years down the line. What world are we creating and leaving for our children and grandchildren? Um, and what can we do to fix the stuff that's broken right now? So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate your answers. I would love to hear more from all of you for so long. So I really appreciate this, especially in Autism Acceptance Month and everything everyone is working on. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, everyone who attended. I really appreciate your questions and all of our panelists' thoughts. Um, thank you again. We will be sending out an email afterwards just with all the links that we shared and all of the work everyone is doing. But I hope you have as good a rest of your day as possible. And thank you again for being here. Have a wonderful night, y'all.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everyone.
All right, take care.
Take care, y'all.